Welcome back to the DSR channel, and I am working on covering the book Eberron, Forge of the Artificer, the new book that just came out. It's got a lot of great player options, and I am working on the bastions and vehicles parts of that, and it just references so many things unique to the history of Eberron and the lore of Eberron that I think it can be a little bit confusing, and the lore is just so important and interesting. Okay, and Eberron is a very compelling campaign setting. I love the premise. So what I want to do is I'm going to do a lore primer in 5 minutes, just to give you highlights of these things to like just whet your appetite. So if you want to go when you read a term, you'll at least recognize it, what it means, and uh, help you figure out like where to go to get more of that, right? And almost all of this is actually going to come from Eberron Rising from the Last War book that is a 5th edition book and still valid, right? Some of those player options in there, or all the player options in there, have now been reprinted and are now legacy, but all the lore in there is all still valid, okay? And in classic DSR fashion, we're going to start somewhere else because for me, to help me understand things, it's really important to tie relationships between things I'm familiar with to things I'm less familiar with to help me understand those things better. So we're going to start with the Dungeon Master's Guide real fast. The default cosmology for the D&D settings is called the Great Wheel cosmology, and it's probably one that you're used to, right? Which is there's the inner planes, and you're familiar with all those. Material plane is one of the inner planes, and then you have the outer planes that are based on alignments. And there's the upper planes and the lower planes of the outer planes, right? And then there's the outlands, which is like the true neutral plane right in the center of the outer planes. Okay, that's the Great Wheel. Eberron does not use the Great Wheel cosmology. What it uses is a very different cosmology. So the origin myth of Eberron is that there were 3 progenitor dragons named Sybaris, Eberron, and Kyber. They created everything, the 13 extra dimensional planes, and then the material plane they created last. Of course, Kyber, being the evil dragon, decided to rebel and wanted to conquer the material plane, and so it attacked Sybaris, I guess the good dragon, and killed it and tore its body apart. And then Eberron, the middle dragon, uh, tried to restrain Kyber but couldn't defeat Kyber, and so Eberron just wrapped its body around Kyber, and that became Eberron the planet. Okay, and so you can see this in the cosmology here. So I don't know what you would call this cosmology. It's like just a bunch of planes floating in a whatever. Okay, so you've got Sybaris representing the dragon above, that is the dragon above, and there are several planes associated with the dragon above. Then you got 4 planes kind of representing Eberron, which is the equivalent of which is the prime material plane, Eberron. Then you have Thelanis, which is like the Feywild. You've got Dolur, which is like the Shadowfell, right? And then Dalcor is the region of dreams, which doesn't really have an equivalent to the standard Great Wheel cosmology. There might be like a lesser realm of dreams there that I can't think of off the top of my head. But Dalcor, the realm of dreams, is also where the Kori, I think is how you say it, Kori come from, which is the dream spirits that are bonded with the humanoids that create the Kalashtar. All right, so the Kalashtar are a humanoid bonded with one of these dream spirits from Dalcor, right? And then Kyber, the dragon below, is like still alive but restrained by Eberron and contained inside of Eberron. Eberron, the dragon between. And so Kyber is like the Underdark of Eberron. It has the plains of Fernia, the Sea of Fire, Risia, the plane of ice, and Kithri, the churning chaos. And Kithri is kind of like limbo. Fernia and Risia also double as not only as elemental planes, but also like hellish planes, like the hot version of hell and the cold version of hell. All right, we're going to zoom in on the planet Eberron, which is also the prime material plane for the campaign setting. And there are 4 major continents: Corvair, Zendrik, Argonessen, and Sarlona. Corvair is the primary continent where most things happen, but not everything. And there is a history there where there was a giant nation that built a mighty kingdom on the continent of Zendrik that was devastated by war with the dragons of Argonessen, which is the other continent. And then there was a goblin empire called Dakan that ruled Corvair until its reign was shattered by an invading army of mind flayers, beholders, and the foul creatures that created them. So those are all 3 of those nations or civilizations are known throughout only as the remains and ruins left behind. Okay, so then we're going to zoom in on Corvair, the primary continent, and it was divided into all these it was one kingdom known as Galifar for a long time, but recently they had a big civil war that ended in recently, right? In recent, only a few years ago, depending on where you're starting in your campaign setting. And that is the last war. Eberron Rising from the Last War was that major civil war that resulted in the destruction of the nation known as Syr or Syri. I'm not sure which way you pronounce that. And then they finally created a treaty, and that treaty recognized certain nations as their own sovereign nations now. So they're no longer one kingdom with multiple nations. It's now all separate sovereign kingdoms. So the different sovereign kingdoms are now Onder, Breland, Dargan, the Elden Reaches, Karnath, the Lazar Principalities, the Mror Holds, Kabara, the Talenta Plains, Thrain, Valinar, and Zelargo. The Demon Waste and Shadow Marches regions have no unified government, and Droam has declared itself a nation, but yet to be recognized by the treaty. And part of the war, it ended when some major apocalyptic thing occurred, and the lore on what happened is fuzzy. But it like destroyed the nation of Seir that was in the middle, and that's created what's called the Mournland, which is a place of just post-apocalyptic destruction, right? And it's hard to live there. And also part of this big war was the Warforged were created, culminating in creating Warforged Titans. And part of the treaty that ended the war also made it illegal to create more Warforged of any kind. The Warforged that were already existing were given their own legal individuality, right? The right to be their own sentient being. So they were treated as people now, but you can't create new ones. And it's illegal to create new ones of any kind. And creating a Warforged Titan is a major, major offense that we're going to see in some of these later videos I'm going to go over today. All right, that is a lot of history I probably didn't make it in 5 minutes, but less than 10 minutes. There you go.